For years, the Dewalt 735X has been the best and most popular hobby planer on the market, but it might finally have some real competition because this is the new Oliver 155. And don't worry, this isn't some glorified unboxing video. If you've never watched my channel, you're about to find out why no tool companies would ever sponsor these videos. We'll be talking about the good, the bad, and everything in between for both machines, and if I think this should be your next purchase. Let's start with the elephant in the room, price. The Dewalt 735X will run you $859. The Oliver, a whopping $1,869.99.
I am never going to financially recover from this.
Now, it should be noted there is a base model version of the Dewalt for $600 without the extension tables, but we need to be comparing somewhat similar features here. So the question becomes, what exactly are you getting for that extra $1,000? And do I think those upgrades are worth it for your average hobby woodworker? First up, and most importantly, is size. The Dewalt has a cutting capacity that's 13 inches wide. The Oliver is 15 inches. Now, I've owned my Dewalt for 10 years, and I can honestly say I have never found myself wishing I had those extra 2 inches. Insert male genitals joke. Maybe if you're bad at making panels and frequently need to take care of crappy glue-ups, or you make a lot of Etsy cutting boards, but for a large percentage of hobby woodworkers, I don't see the extra 2 inches being as valuable as most companies and internet know-it-alls would lead you to believe. The 735 comes standard with 3 straight knives, old school, tried and true. The Oliver comes equipped with a fancy-dancy helical cutter head right out of the box. Now, if you don't know the difference between straight knives and a helical head, Cliff Notes is this. Straight knives are exactly what they sound like. It's a straight knife. They are much cheaper, but the cut quality can suffer, resulting in grain tear out. And if you get a nick in the blade, the entire thing needs to be sharpened or replaced. They also seem to dull much faster, plus they are so incredibly loud. Helical cutter heads have dozens of small carbide cutters arranged in a spiral pattern positioned at a slight angle to your workpiece, and they slice through the wood more cleanly. They're also quieter, and when one cutter gets dull or nicked, you just rotate it instead of replacing the entire thing, but you're paying a big premium for that. How much, you ask? Well, you're in luck, because there are different companies that sell aftermarket helical heads to install into the 735. Everyone, including myself, does it, because helical is just that much better if you plane a lot of wood. Bird is the most well-known and arguably the best. It's what is in this planer here, and it will run you $550 if you choose to install it yourself, bringing the total price of the planer to $1,409. Or you can buy one already installed for a grand total of $1,695 while voiding your warranty, which brings us much closer to the price of the Oliver. But this is where it comes time to air out some dirty laundry and concerns for both machines. The Mellow Yellow is a 2 horsepower universal motor wired for a standard 120. That works great with the 3 knives. However, when you plop a big old helical head in this, which it wasn't designed for, the motor does struggle. Simply put, it's underpowered. And for whatever reason, no one ever talks about this online in videos. The result is tripping the internal breaker on the machine, and then it cuts off when it's under stress. The more often you trip it, the more likely it becomes. And I'm on my second replacement breaker and actually due for another here. And we were talking about big passes. Light passes stress this out when you're working with dense woods. Now, this is just shy of a 32nd of an inch cut on a 7-inch wide board of sapele, and bam! Almost like I knew that was going to happen because I've done it so many times. And that's why I was so excited when this was announced a year ago, since the bigger 2.5 horsepower induction motor is designed to handle a helical head because it's wired for 240. I don't even know what induction means, but I think I like it. As I was saying, same board but a 1/16 of an inch pass, more than twice as deep, and this doesn't even flinch. My Dewalt would disappear into a black hole with that cut. However, the more I thought about this, if you're going to unseat the king of hobby planers, 240 is actually an issue. Most homes out of the copy and paste subdivision playbook don't even have a 240 line in the garage, and getting one run is expensive, and sometimes it's not even possible on older homes with smaller panels. It's a real problem, and quite frankly, it eliminates a good percentage of weekend warriors. I told you, this is going to be a lot of good and bad. Now, the good side to that bigger induction motor is that it is a lot quieter when running compared to the Dewalt. It is shockingly impressive. Although it should be noted that the Dewalt does have an internal blower to aid with dust collection, adding to the noise. However, dust collection on both machines is about the same. There will be some chips on the bed and around them after use. It's nothing crazy though. Now, it would be crazy to not take a look at a new course I just released. It's called Honest Finishing, and it's over 4.5 hours of incredible content that will help you gain the confidence to apply any of the most common finishes to your next projects. We'll even discuss at length how to select the right product and get your workpiece ready to go. The two things most people mess up. For the next week, it's discounted at an amazing price to help celebrate the launch. Again, it's a heck of a deal, so check out the link in the description below. And don't miss out, like I said, the clock is ticking. I would say the motor, cutting width, and cutter head are the three main upgrades that this has over the Dewalt, but there are some additional features that come standard. The Oliver is equipped with a built-in digital readout, which tells you how thick the workpiece will be after that pass. I found it dead on accurate with my calipers afterwards. It's super easy to calibrate, which is very helpful because I did discover a quirk. If you raise or lower the cutter head for storage when it's unplugged, it uncalibrates, if that's even a word. It is part of a bigger grievance we will discuss though momentarily. Is it ticky-tack? Sure, but I think it's worth pointing out. Now, I did have to buy an aftermarket from Wixie that I added to my Dewalt for around $75, and it's essentially a mandatory add-on with a helical head because you need to know what depth you are at when you inevitably trip the damn thing, and then you have to raise the cutter head to get the workpiece back out. And that Wixie digital readout does stay calibrated when it's off and the cutter head is moved up and down. Now, some other things that are different. The Oliver has these anti-kickback fingers in the front. The Dewalt does not. I've never had a kickback with my Dewalt, but I do play by the rules for the most part. Additionally, the Oliver has this nice roller bar on top of the machine for sliding your boards back easily when you're planing with your friends. Sadly, my shop friends have no opposable thumbs and a bad attitude. Speaking of friends, you're going to need some help with the Oliver planer because it's time to address the actual elephant in the room, and that is that this thing is basically an elephant. Now, both of these are marketed as benchtop planers. Look, they're doing benchtop things right now. And I'm not sure that that technically means that they're portable. Maybe it's just implied. However, this thing here weighs 158 pounds. Yes, I'm frail and a bit Gumby-like in appearance, but I feel like I'm in decent enough shape, and there is no way that I could move this on my own without risking dropping it. The extra width plus the lack of handles in the appropriate place equal a disaster waiting to happen. Now, it should be noted that the Dewalt is no feather. It does weigh 90 pounds, but it's manageable and has actual carrying handles in an accessible location. That doesn't mean, though, that I enjoy picking it up. In fact, I use a motorcycle lift to save my back when it comes time to use this and then store it away after. All of that to say, I don't know how many people are doing anything other than using these machines in their workshop. It's not something that you bring over to a friend's house on a Friday night for funsies. And I also don't know many contractors that are trying to tote these around to job sites. So when I think about tools like these that are marketed as benchtop, portable should be replaced with storable because you buy tools like these due to a lack of space the floor models require. However, I get hung up with the storable aspect on the Oliver because it's just so heavy. Now, I suppose it would be possible to use my motorcycle lift, but that could get sketchy really fast. The only way I would feel comfortable with this is keeping it on a dedicated cart like my drum sander. Oliver does sell a stand for a couple $100, but now you're creeping up on the price of a floor model cast iron planer. Additionally, if this is designed to be storable, they should have resolved the digital readout calibration issue when you raise and lower the cutter head if it's unplugged. And the more that I say all this out loud, the more I'm having trouble understanding where exactly this fits in, if you couldn't tell already. Now, I don't want this to sound like it's all negative because it's not. Most importantly, the performance of the 155 is really, really good. There is virtually no snipe. The cut quality is impeccable, as you would expect. Even when I took 1/16 of an inch passes, there seems to be no drift at all in the main carriage as it stays locked in on a depth during heavy cuts. Unlike the mellow yellow over here, which does have some play occasionally. And your neighbors will dislike you less than owning the Dewalt because it's so much quieter. I mean, there is a lot to love about this machine, and it does remind me of solid cast iron planers that I've spent a lot of time with. However, if you add in the $219 stand to the $1869 price point, At over $2,000, you're not far off from a 3 horsepower cast iron floor model Grizzly. So we need to circle back to the original question that started this video. Is this going to be the next king of hobby planers? Look, the Dewalt is not a perfect machine, especially when you add in the helical head issue. Quite frankly, I barely use mine at this point because I'm just so frustrated by the entire experience. With 3 knives though, it's an absolute gem. The Oliver solves the major problem by beefing up the build with a bigger motor designed for the specialty cutter head. But at almost $2,000 and wired for $240 and an actual elephant, it's really tough for me to say that this will kick the Dewalt out of the way. Because my initial gut reaction and comparison was just wrong, and the countless other videos that you will see in the future will also be wrong when looking at the two side by side. Because other than looks, they just aren't comparable. So it wouldn't be fair for me to say which machine is better. I mean, clearly it's the one that's 2.5 times the cost. But that doesn't mean it's a better value relative to the DeWalt. In my opinion, the Oliver is much closer to standalone floor model planers and should be looked at as a smaller, potentially storable version of those. It's a great machine for a specific group of people looking to do a lot of heavy planing without spending $2,500 to $3,000 and have the space to keep this on a DIY table or the sold separately cart. Is it for me? Look, my space is severely limited in this tiny one-car garage, so I would say the jury is still out. I guess you'll find out in future videos. I'm gonna go inside and pretend to reply to the emails from the tool companies that never even want to say hi to me. I hope this one helped. We'll see ya.